My relationship with my parents was really formed on the Highway 401. It was where my dad first picked us up in Toronto to take us to Kingston, so we talk about the highway being like my first impression of this country. But it's also where a lot of emotionally damaging stuff happened, but also emotionally healing things happened. I return to the highway a lot as a metaphor, but also just like a literal site of this is where I was when I was thinking about all these things.
Because life is a highway.
Because life...
I'm sorry.
Nice.
The library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
Thank you all for being here. Thanks so much. We're all here because we're fans of Elamine.
Hi.
Yeah, give it up for Elamine.
It's just so nice to be here. This is the nicest room in the world. I love this room. Also, like, there are other things that you could be doing with your time. Top Gun is out. What are you doing here?
No.
Phoebe Bridgers is in town, you know? And so I don't know, I'm grateful to see this crowd. Thanks, y'all, for being
Yeah,
here.
thank you so much for being here. And Elamine, how has this been? You know, this memoir's been out for under a month.
Yeah.
It's real life now.
Doesn't feel like it. Still doesn't feel like it. Honestly, like, I keep looking at this book and be like, oh, this is gonna come out sometime next year, right? Like, it still feels a little bit surreal that it's out in the world. People keep bringing up stuff that's it's in the book, and I go like, how do you know that? And then they read in the book, and I sort of have to go through this like process of reminding myself, like, oh yeah, it's out in the world. So I think I will process this, also this, like 6 months from now. But until then, it's like a dream. It's like a wonderful
it's
dream.
in print.
Yeah.
It will exist forever.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And people will be able to reference it until the end of time.
Thank you so much. That totally takes the pressure off. I really appreciate that.
So what does it feel like having a permanent, no, I'm joking. But, okay, I'll really actually start asking you questions now.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it is actually really difficult to like write about yourself and, you know, your journey with identity. And I feel like especially as writers of similar experience, it's like a very straightforward way to kind of get into the world of essays and journalism. And, you know, it's almost like this thing that becomes frowned upon because you're pigeonholing yourself into writing about your identity. And one thing that struck me about the book is that you really kind of deal with these topics in a way that I haven't really read before, and that doesn't rely on, you know, tropes or the same conversations that we kind of have all the time. So how did you manage that? Like, what was the process like?
I stressed a lot about that part. And I genuinely mean that because for me, like, I've read the same essays that you've read, you know, wrestling with identity, wrestling with blackness, wrestling with immigrantness. And I wanted to, first of all, I just felt very unspecial. I was like, well, I'm black and an immigrant too.
Yeah.
Okay, and so my story's gotta be somewhere in here, and I gotta figure out my own entry point to that. For me, my entry point to that was this idea of elsewhere, this idea of bouncing back between place and another, and then eventually trying to claim the space in the middle, trying to claim the space of saying, that's not home, this is not home, this other place, this place is suspended between the two planes is home. What does that look like? Can we put on some emotional contours to this place? Can we try to define what this idea is? And I think that was a good sort of guiding light and guiding principle for me, because I was like, I don't think I've read that before in a way that I want to do it. And then I tried it, and hopefully, you know, it's something new, something original, that it's a contribution to what I acknowledge is like a long line of other folks who've thought about these identities in this way.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like writing, even forget about identity, but just your personal life or things that have happened to you, real people, like that is never easy. And I guess what kind of made you decide to take that route when for your debut? You know, like you write about so many things, like you write profiles and, you know, you have essays about pop culture and world events. Like it's definitely not the only thing you're known for. So what was it like kind of delving into such a personal world?
I think it started with wanting to make amends, wanted to make some kind of apologies to at least certain parts of my identity. So I grew up in Sudan. I moved to Canada when I was 12, and when I moved to this country, I moved to Kingston, Ontario, home of the Tragically Hip, you know, and home of the Frontenacs. This is neither here nor there. The process of moving to Kingston meant suspending, I think, or at least for me, suspending certain parts of my identity so that I have an easier time blending in. So it was like, I'm gonna start not talking about my blackness, not talking about my immigrantness, not talking about my Muslimness, because that's just gonna make it easier for me to get through the day, from day to day. It's growing up in a country that has a lot of history of shadeism and colorism. Arriving in this country, I was like, I'm not black. I don't know what that means. And especially growing up in Kingston, my only sort of most predominant examples of blackness were on television. It was fucking Ja Rule. Like it wasn't.
Yeah,
That's
the Ja Rule
not-
thing was very specific.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, there were a lot of rappers coming up at that time. Why was it Ja Rule, you know?
Well, fair point.
I was like looking at that, I was like, he picked Ja Rule.
Well, I needed an enemy,
Okay.
and Ja Rule felt like a good enemy, you know. DMX has passed away. That felt rude. But there was like this period of time of trying to identify visible examples of blackness, and it was like Ja Rule, DMX, and Cisco.
And Cisco
know?
never did anything wrong to anyone.
Yeah. He just tried to sing that one song, and he was very
He
happy
just
about it.
was singing about thongs.
This is it. This is it. So Ja Rule kind of felt like a natural enemy to sort of, not enemy, but like just like a counterforce to push against
All right.
in terms of my understanding of blackness. And when I wanted to return to that period of time of wanting to suspend those identities, wanting to sort of put a blackness on the shelf and be like, I'll come back to you later. I wanted to explore what that feeling was, what the motivation behind that was. And that felt like a memoir to me. Sort of felt like I also cheated a little bit in the sense that I didn't want to write a book. I wanted to write some essays, because that's what I'm good at. I don't know how people sort of begin a book and then go just like all the way to the end. Like, what is that? I don't have that muscle. But I could write an essay. I could sort of control an entry point and control an exit point. That for me sort of is like something that I'm relatively familiar with. And I picked 14 different exit points, and that's how we got the book.
Yeah, and you know, in the book as well, you mentioned that when you were, you know, starting to write, someone said like, you should be making a lot of enemies, like something along those lines.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then you realize it's because you're not writing to make other people feel comfortable or to show other people like, look at me, I'm like normal, like this is how I am, like for a predominantly white audience.
Yeah.
So especially when you're touching on these things that are, you know, we know what shadeism is and
Sure.
East Africa, like we know about these things, but at the same time, it's like you found this way to write about it so that anyone could read it and understand without really casting judgment on how, I guess, white supremacy affects black people in that way.
Sure.
So what was that like?
Honestly, that was a really hard decision to make. Like that
Yeah.
was because there are a lot of explanatory commas in this book, and explanatory comma is just like the simple act of you say the name of a concept and then you just got to put a comma and then a small explanation and then you keep moving in terms of how that concept applies to what you're talking about. But the thing about the explanatory comma is that it can be alienating, because if you throw in too many explanatory commas and you are writing about a specific community, say the Muslim community, and they read an explanation of like what Hajj is, if they read that explanation, they go, this book might not be for me. A reader might go, this book is not for me. And I had to make a balance between choosing when to add those explanatory commas and when to forego them and sort of trust that a reader will be like, all right, I'll Google this. I don't know what it is. But I think there's more explanatory commas than I maybe would have preferred at the start. But this goes back to that journalist who told me I need to make more enemies. That journalist was supposed to be here tonight. Her name is Vicky Muchama. She's wonderful. Sorry to out Vicky as the person who...
Vicky, are you? No, I'm
literally,
Vicky, please stand up.
literally the first time we ever met, she didn't say hello. She said, "Hey, you need to make more enemies." I was like, "Wow, okay." And I sort of later understood that she was trying to say, "What are you doing? What are you doing with this dance in terms of the people that you're trying to make comfortable? Who are you speaking for, and who are you speaking to?" I chickened out in the book in the sense that I don't think I've arrived at an answer. I don't think I've arrived at a place where I'm like, I know what I'm doing with this. I know exactly who I'm speaking to. I think it's sort of, I let it shift. It's allowed to shift. I haven't come to a conclusion about that yet.
Well, maybe you will tonight.
Yeah, that's the hope. Help me.
Another kind of cool device in the book is a spoiler. It's on the cover. Highways.
Yes.
A lot, and well, I'm kind of realizing it's a bit of a metaphor because, journeys, highways.
Yo, bro.
That was good.
Yeah. You're a literary genius. A giant among us. Yes.
Wow.
Go off.
It was really cool, reading the book and getting these kind of snippets of how you viewed, freedom and being able to drive places and just like the openness of a road and listening to the music you wanted to listen to and feeling like you're going somewhere. So I'd love for you to, talk about the choice of weaving in that kind of through line, and then also if you could read some of it.
I'd love to.
We're going to find out if you can read.
Thank you. Can you imagine? So my cousin just walked in. Hi, Mazen. You're late, bro. It's fine, though. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the weaving in of the highway first, the roads metaphor. So there's 5 different pieces in the book. 4? Can't remember. 5 different pieces in the book that are called roads, and each one of them takes place on the highway. And they're all about my relationship with my parents. That's because for me, my relationship with my parents was really formed on the Highway 401. It was where my dad first picked us up in Toronto to take us to Kingston. So it was talk about the highway being like my first impression of this country. But it's also where a lot of emotionally damaging stuff happened, but also emotionally healing things happened. I return to the highway a lot as a metaphor, but also just like a literal site of this is where I was when I was thinking about all these things.
Because life is a highway.
Because life...
I'm sorry.
Nice. 10 out of 10.
I made that
Tom
up right
Cochrane
now.
would be proud. Because life is a highway. And if you read the book, you don't have to, but if you read this book, you'll find that there's 5 different pieces all called roads. The cheat, though, I will tell you tonight and tell no one, except for that camera over there. I'll tell no one that they were all written at the same time. So all the roads pieces were all just one single piece. When it was finished, it was like 13,000 words. And it was supposed to go first. And I was like, I can't do this to an audience. I can't do this to a reader. Just like pick up a book, be like, let me get into this book. 13,000 word essay right at the start. That's cruel. Or at least for me, because like, you'd be like, you lost me, dude, I'm out. And so as a result, we sort of started talking about splitting it up. And at first it was like, maybe we'll split it in half. We'll go, the first half right at the start, and then we'll sort of do a second portion of the book that will be kicked off by it too. But then as we kind of kept going, we is not all just myself, me and my editor, Jared Bland, who we talked about, as we sort of kept on dividing it up, it kind of lined up with other chronological moments, other essays in the book. And so Roads becomes kind of like the thing you keep returning to as the book keeps happening. It just kind of ended up dividing up that way very nicely. It's an accident in the sense that like it worked out so perfectly that it looks like the most intentional decision possible.
It does. I would have never known.
Yeah. I should have told you guys. I should have been like,
I was like, this guy's a genius.
wow, He's so smart, but like
Now we know better.
yeah, here to help. Here to help. So let me read the start of chapter 2, which is Roads, part 1. The first friend I ever made in Canada was the highway. Before the boy with the Xbox in one of the basement apartments, before the skater kids with the baggy jeans who let me hang around them in the schoolyard, before the Christian kids with toothy grins, it was the highway. And it makes sense. I met the highway first. I met the highway when my emotions were raw and my confusion was high. I met the highway minutes after I landed at Pearson Airport to a small and boisterous welcome party led by Baba, who I hadn't seen for 5 years. I met the highway while trying to make sense of how everything was about to change. There's a great big clearing in the arrivals hall of Pearson Airport. Congregating people awaiting their loved ones always leave the clearing empty until they see who they're waiting for. I suspect this is because everyone waiting has agreed to an unwritten contract. You have to give people space to let their emotions occupy the whole room when it's their turn. Perhaps the man who hasn't seen his mother for years may need some breathing room to fall apart after feeling her touch again. Excuse me. Perhaps the wife who hasn't seen her husband for months may need a wide berth to leap, knowing she'll be caught. The clearing is where the emotions live, where people do what they need to do, and onlookers kindly avert their gaze, where people leave their preceding loneliness or misery or anticipation and enter joy. Me, I entered the clearing unknowingly. Mama and I passed a series of sliding doors in a magnificent maze of sliding doors. We couldn't read English, so really we were just following the crowd who seemed to know where to go. We exited the last set of sliding doors, and as the frosted glass parted, I saw Baba. And before I said a word, he began crossing the clearing, making his way through the holy space. He held my face in his hands for what seemed like an eternity, as though his brain was, in real time, replacing the photos he was sent from Sudan with the real thing. And I could see that his emotions filled the room. He introduced us to our welcome party, 8 people in 3 cars, all of them Sudanese people who lived in the same city as Baba, the city that was about to become home. They took turns telling me how much Baba had talked about our arrival and how they'd worried he might crash driving to the airport because he was bursting to see us. Between the fluorescent lights of the airport, the overwhelm of the welcome party, and the sudden realization that Baba really was right in front of me, not to mention the dawning reality that I would now call this place I just landed home, I needed time to process and get my bearings, acclimate to my surroundings. What were we dealing with here exactly? Then my eyes filled with wonder as we hit the highway. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. If you'd lived your whole life in Sudan, a country plagued for decades by subpar infrastructure, you too would have marveled at the way the on-ramp bleeds onto the 401, which in turn gracefully ducks beneath magnificent winding arch of the 427, but is somehow still above Highway 27. You would have thought it was a miracle. The whole thing is a furious clash of snaking turns and exits, a geography of grace and chaos.
That's just one of the things you can read in Elamene's book, which you could buy at the end of this talk.
Perfect, thank you.
We're here to sell it.
Always be closing.
It's really good. You know, throughout the essays in the book, you know, there's so much, like there's a real emotional pull of, you know, not just finding yourself, but community and what that means to you. And, you know, like when you came to Canada and the ways you were trying to find out what you liked and how you related to other kids and everything. And I guess, how has that kind of changed throughout your life, you know, especially as someone who did come to the country with like past memories? You know, so many people come when they're children or they're second gen or, you know, but it was so recent in your adolescence. Like, I mean, not so recent in your adolescence, but so early on in your adolescence at this like really pivotal moment in your life. So how has that kind of been for you, you know, this journey of finding community and your interests and the stuff you like?
Imagine if you like the answer to your beautiful question is like just vibes.
I feel like I'm being so vulnerable. I'm so scared.
Imagine. 12 is a sensitive age
Yeah.
to come to this country, I think. Like, there's something about that period of time.
It's old.
It's low-key,
It's
very
pretty
old.
old.
Like, you come at 12, it's like, you remember everything, right? If you come a little bit younger, you have a chance to forget, right? So your new home becomes a little bit easier to conceive of as like, this is now home. If you come a little bit later, you're like, no, I don't know this new place. No new friends, you know? I'll get to know it, but like really home is that other place. But 12 is a place when you're trying to navigate yourself at the same time as trying to navigate the space around you, and you're trying to define yourself against everything that is around you. And I think, honestly, if I come at like 15, this book wouldn't exist, and if I come at 9, this book wouldn't exist either. But 12 is like the sensitive age when you're just trying to be like, hey, will you connect with me? You know, will you be my friend? And the people that I found in Kingston that I'm so grateful for were the Christian kids, purely by the fact that my parents were like, well, at least they believe in something.
Also, you're like, their parents are strict too.
Yeah, it's 100%. Like honestly, they always had this like vibe check of like, well, how religious are they? You know, and fair enough, like, because for them, they sort of grown up in a world where religion was the kind of the binding glue of everyone around them, and so they at least found it a little bit easier to conceive of me spending time with other religious kids, as long as I was like home by like 8. You know, for them that was an okay way to conceive of it. And as my relationship with blackness and my relationship with Muslimness and my relationship with being an immigrant changed, particularly after I left Kingston, I spent quite a bit of time thinking about, you know, why I wanted to leave those identities behind, but also what is it in me that made me learn that those are identities that I should leave behind? Because it's not like I came here and just like suddenly learned that lesson, like, hey, this is bad, don't be that. I sort of came pre-equipped to take on those lessons, and so it took time to find the community, but I'm really grateful for it.
Great answer. I
Thanks,
guess.
man. Like 8 out of 10. It's pretty good.
That's good. And, you know, I think a lot about this idea of, you know, finding acceptance, you know. Again, 12 is so young, but also so old when it comes to like forming your personality, where, you know, in a few years, you're basically an adult.
Yeah.
Like you're like 18 the next day.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm wondering is, you know, in your book, it wasn't that you were trying to be something else. Like, it's not like there was no expression of like, oh, I'm ashamed to be from this place, and I'm ashamed of who I am, and what my parents do. Like, you know what I mean? There was nothing really like that. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, what was I keep saying the word journey.
I love journey.
I hate that word.
Good word.
Like, what was your experience, you know, not just going back in time and thinking about how you thought about yourself and how you started identifying as Black or what that meant to you, but I guess, you know, being an adult now and honoring those experiences and feelings that weren't always like the correct way to go about things of, you know, wanting to change your name or whatever. But yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, like, what's it like to look back on those times and be like, oh, I wish I would have known this or had this person in my life, or, you know.
I mean, I think a lot about the expectations for a memoir like this, to sometimes include stories of like a schoolyard bully who's like, get out of here with your skin color. I don't know why a bully would talk like that. I didn't have that. I was really grateful not to have that. Nor did I have like sort of outward expressions of shame during that period of time.
Exactly. It seems like
Right?
you weren't ashamed to be
No.
one of the few Black kids, or one of the few Muslim kids, or one of the few immigrants, or
But like for me, I return to that and go, this book is really about the ways that I learned to make myself small in certain ways, or like learn to sort of make myself fit into those certain spaces. And by that I mean, like, you know, as soon as I could, I got a nickname, Stan the Microphone Man, and I was like, perfect, that's my name now. I sort of did all the things that I could to blend in, and revisiting those moments particularly, I'm thinking about the experience of what is it inside of you that teaches you that you got to make yourself small in these moments. You got to sort of try to hide as much as possible and say, yeah, I'm black, but let's not talk about it. Yeah, I'm an immigrant, but let's not talk about it. And so much of this book is about sort of trying to grapple with the ways that you make yourself small without really an external force telling you to do that, just a sense that things will go easier if you do. And then the things that you lose when you make yourself small in that way, and having to sort of make up for it later.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of going into that more, the ways you made yourself smaller. I'm just thinking of that quote. I always make a joke about, we're just going to talk about later, but
Okay.
we teach women to shrink themselves.
Go off.
Anyway, keep forgetting there's 100 people here.
Right there.
But I guess, like, you know, I feel like it's an ongoing process almost. Like, do you feel like these are lessons you're kind of learning into adulthood? You know, you're a father and, you know, you're like an adult, a fully grown adult,
What?
some would say. I know, it's weird to say to you.
I'm a
but-
father, yes. Adult? Yeah.
But, you know, and your daughter will be raised knowing about your background and your, you know what I mean? Like, so what are the ways, I guess, that you're thinking about that now in the present? Because I feel like there's still so many opportunities where, you know, you feel like, I have to make myself smaller. I have to not talk about this thing or make this thing seem like it's okay when it bothers me. And it's not something that kind of goes away.
I think, at least right now, I'm sort of going through this relationship with my daughter where I'm very consciously aware of all the ways that I'm not teaching her about where I'm from. Not like out of specific intention of omitting it. We have this like framework that we worked out called Baba School. We've never done it. So we've been like, every Saturday we'll do like a little Baba School and I'll teach you a little bit about Sudan and where I'm from. And she was like, great, sounds perfect, see you on Saturday. And I'm like, never mind. Every Saturday I'm like, you just watching Kanto instead, that's better. And I think for me, I'm not sure that I'm measuring up to the work. I put all of this in the book and I'm like, oh, it's a lot of work actually to remember not to make yourself small. Remember not to put these identities on the shelf. And by that I mean, like, it's a lot of work to develop an idea of like, okay, this is the specific lesson I want to communicate to my daughter this weekend. And we're going to go through this whole process of having her learn it. I'm not there yet. I'm not very good at it. And I think so much of this book was about trying to outline what that work might be like. And I think the next step is like, now I got to do it. So I regrettably have like given myself homework.
Yeah, and another thing that I always find fascinating with memoirs is obviously it's your real personal life, which is the definition of a memoir. Some may say essays about your real and personal life.
Yeah.
You know, how do you choose what to include and what to exclude? Or how, you know, writing about your parents or your wife, shout out
right
Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
put
it's
you on
like,
the spot.
Emily?
Stand up. No.
Do you want to give a bow? Okay, all right.
But you know, like it's hard to know how to include people in your own personal narrative and your experience and how you remember things.
Yeah.
And it's not always going to be the same way someone remembered things. And there's going to be stuff about yourself that you reveal to even the people who are closest to you. What kind of, no, I'm joking. We don't have to go into detail.
Who didn't know what?
Who didn't know when and what fights happened?
Yeah.
But I mean, really though, like, how do you decide what to include as far as your personal life goes, or what to hold on to? Because of course, like, there's that fear of people knowing things about you, or you know.
Yeah. I would say two things. One has been this thing that I keep saying, that I said to our pal Jared Bland, my editor. I was like, look, there is two versions of this book. One I can write when my parents are alive, and one I can write when they're not here. They're both alive. You're getting that one, right? This is the version of the book that exists because my parents are alive. I think some of these stories there'd be more stories. I think some of them more painful, some of them funny, some of them mostly like shameful, but they're not comfortable to share while my parents are alive. And I think like for me, that's something that I'm thinking about in terms of like I have a responsibility and a duty to protect them, and I do, and I exercise that duty. Not while completely omitting the hurtful stuff. There's a lot of pain in this book too, but having said that, like they're here, so that's sort of one constraint. Then the other constraint is the version that I was of myself when I pitched this book in 2018, because I pitched it as a collection of essays, and I pitched 11 different essay titles that are kind of like areas of investigation that I want to look into, and one of them was like Mohamed Salah of Liverpool fame. You guys know Mohamed Salah. If you don't, I'll help you. Well, yeah, thank you.
If you don't, you will find out in this book.
Yeah, you will. Greatest footballer on the planet. I was like, whoa, is there like a fight about this? We'll do that. What? Wow. Sir, the doors are, no, I'm joking. So I sort of pitched these buckets, right? These buckets, and I'm like, I want to sort of like look at the OC. There's a fair bit about the OC in the book. I want to look, yeah, sure, shout out OC, absolutely. Ryan and Marissa forever, yeah. There's a fair bit about the OC, there's a fair bit about country music, and so I sort of pitched these buckets, and later I was like, I don't know how to work some crucial people and crucial stories into these buckets. And in some cases, some buckets went out the window, but in others I was like, no, I really do want to write about the OC, so I'm gonna keep this one in there. And that was like its own kind of limiting thing, I think. Some essays got cut. I was gonna write a whole long thing that is like about relationship with God and Tom Waits. I'm a big Tom Waits guy. But I ran out of time. I ran out of time in terms of my editor is the nicest human being on earth, and he will never push you on a deadline. He'll just lay out the facts, the consequences of missing it. Just be like, look, man, if you don't like finish it, we're not gonna go to print. And you go like, that sounds bad. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's not great. And so I'm like, well, I think I want this book to come out. And so, for that purpose, like some essays sort of had to be cut.
I remember once I was seeing him, and he was like, I mentioned you, and he's like, yeah, maybe we should tell Elamine to finish his book or something.
Yeah. He was very kind and very patient with me until he was like, I'm gonna continue to be kind and patient, but now there are consequences. Like now, like if you don't finish this thing, it's just not coming out when you said it was coming out. So if you want to be a liar, be your own guest. And so I was like, I don't want to lie to people anymore. So yeah. But it's the buckets. That's what constrained me, and that's why some things are not in the book.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning, actually, I think it was at your book launch, you mentioned that, you'd written all these essays, and the number one thing was like, where are you in this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see, like, you didn't put, like, initially enough of yourself. Like, was there something you had to break through? Was it kind of this kind of ice to break of, writing an essay about the OC and then being like, wait, where am I here?
There was some of that. I mean, like, that was specifically in terms of the tone that I wanted to strike in the book. I write a lot for the internet, and so as a result, like, I think my internet voice is like a little bit more snarky sometimes, like more snarky than I mean it to be. And I wanted to be the most earnest version of myself in this book, and sometimes that meant like writing a page, writing 2 pages, writing a whole essay, and then showing it to Emily, and then Emily's like, this is pretty good. I don't know who wrote it though, because you're not in here. And I go, who are you? What gave you the permission? Don't hide, that's a thing that happened. Don't cower your face. And I was grateful for that, because Emily knows me in most cases better than I know myself. And that means when I show you a version of an essay and you go, this is not sounding like the best version of you. This is not sounding like the version of you that you wanted to show up on this page. Sometimes you need someone who's not in your brain to tell you that. And who better than the person you love most? So thank you. Stop it. Oh, but yes. Aww. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cute. And guess on that note, like, what did you not include? Because I know from some
Sure.
gossip that
Whoa.
no, I'm joking. I know from Jared that there was a ton that you actually didn't end up putting in, or essays that you kind of would abandon, or like stuff that just didn't end up fitting. So I guess I'm wondering, what's the journey like when you're putting together so many essays and you have this proposal
Yeah.
and you think it's gonna be one way and it ends up being a totally different beast?
It was honestly like a lot of music stuff that didn't make it into the book. Had someone come up to me in Calgary the other day, and they were like, "Hey, there's no Tragically Hip in this book," and I'm like, "You're right," and I don't feel good about it either. Like, because I'm a big Tragically Hip person. It would have made a lot of sense for me to sort of weave in an essay that is about Kingston and the Tragically Hip, and that wasn't in the book. To the point where, like one of the things I'm most self-conscious about this book in this iteration is like, I'm like, am I a little mean to Kingston because of the lack of existence of that
Honestly,
essay?
you're pretty generous to Kingston.
Wow.
If anything,
Is that shade? I can't tell.
I would say you were pretty generous.
It's a hometown, man.
I've been there.
Well, but here's the thing. True story about Kingston. Anyone from Kingston here in the crowd? Oh, wow. I'm outnumbered. Cool.
Okay, so it's a safe space. We can talk a little shit.
Oh, the exact opposite is that, like, if there was someone from Kingston here, I'd be like, hey, you and me can talk shit about Kingston, My cousin Mazen lived in Kingston for a minute. You and I can talk shit about Kingston for a minute. But as soon as someone from outside the borders starts talking shit about Kingston, I'm like, yo, do you know it's a first capital? Home of the Tragically Hip. Do you know? Have you been to the waterfront? Like, so you kind of get defensive about your own hometown.
Yeah.
In a way where I was like, I don't think I was sincere enough about
What it
much-
means to you, kind of thing?
yeah, about what it
that
means
makes
to me.
sense.
I think I just wanted to spend a bit more space, more time and space on that. The Tom Waits and God thing is sort of another example of it. The absence of Tom Waits in this book is still wild to me because, like, Tom Waits is an artist that means a lot to me.
Who is?
He's like, is that
Who?
like is it like Harry Styles? Yeah, he's not. Can you imagine?
Who is that?
But yeah.
I mean, and one thing that you mentioned to me actually before we started this was, because I was asking you, I was like, there was stuff that wasn't in the memoir that you'd kind of expect to be in someone's memoir, like, oh, how did you become a writer, or like,
Sure.
just like current things about your life.
Yeah.
And you said something that made a lot of sense to me, where I feel like there's this push for, especially for memoirs or personal writing, to kind of give everything of yourself all the time, and to just kind of like think, what's the worst thing that happened to me? Maybe I should write about that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that isn't there about your life, and you were mentioning that you just haven't really had time to process things that have happened.
Yeah, I don't think that we process things that happened to us recently very clearly. Like, I think we all have a very good track record of this, right? Of, you go through something and 6 months later you're pretty sure of your self-narrative about that event, about how that interaction, how it played out. Then a year later you're like, that former version of me is an idiot. That guy didn't know anything. And our stories sort of keep changing. And so for me, I needed to make sure that I was sure about the version of myself that I was putting on the page. And so there's very little that is recent in the book. I mean, with the exception of maybe like a 2015 story and 2016 story and one 2019 story. Most of this book is like 2012 is probably the latest thing that happens in it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because you need time. You need time to cook. Like, you need time to sort of solidify your own understanding of an event, solidify your own understanding of how something played out in your life, and how it informs the person that you are now. And if you're trying to write about something that just happened to you a year ago, you're like, what do I know? Like, it just happened. I've barely had a chance to forget it, let alone re-remember it and integrate it into who I am now. And so there's, you brought up fatherhood earlier. Like, there's very little fatherhood in this.
Yeah, there's hardly any.
Yeah, and it's like, I just got there. Like, she's 5, you know what I mean? I'm new to this game. I think we'll get there later in terms of having an opportunity to reflect on that. But
Yeah.
I don't get people who are like, I just had a kid 6 months ago, and here's my memoir about it. I'm like, what? It feels a little bit too fresh for me. I think you need time to see an arc of a person and yourself in that person in order for you to be able to, pull some thoughts and reflect on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.